Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show on this Sunday evening, October 24th, 2021. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska. We have all sorts of weather information available online. And if you have any questions, concerns, or wish to share an interesting report or an image that you've taken, you can reach me at peter.chan@noaa.gov. Well, in the weather headlines this evening, we have a storm force Aleutian North Pacific low that's tracking just south, the center, just south of the Aleutian chain at this time. And it will be emerging into the lower southwest Gulf North Pacific interface here as we head into tomorrow. There's also another area of low pressure that's forming up around the Seward Peninsula, lower Chukchi Sea. This one is not as strong, but it's going to help keep some colder air circulating down into the west side of the state, as well as produce areas of light snow or snow showers. And some of that will also spread snow in through the central interior, where there is a winter weather advisory in effect for Tanana, and I'll show you that coming up here in just a moment. But looking farther ahead here to close out the end of October and start the beginning of November, 30th of October through November 3rd, precipitation is looking like it will be averaging above normal over south central areas, especially in and around Cook Inlet. And this could spell not just some cold rain, but even the potential for some snow. Well, looking at winds, we do have that storm force low passing just south of the Aleutians. There was some wind gusts up around 70 miles an hour at Adak. The system, as we go through tonight, early tomorrow morning, will be passing south of Unalaska, Dutch Harbor area, and on the backside of it, we still may see some low-end storm force winds here early in the night, but otherwise gale force winds that emerges out into the northern Pacific Gulf interface. Otherwise, the rest of the state winds are not terribly strong. Some wind there up toward the Bering Strait along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, and then going into Monday morning. Still, I would expect gale force winds out of the north on the backside of that low across the eastern Aleutians and at least the tip there of the Alaska Peninsula. And the winds continue out there out through this Bering Strait. And then into Monday afternoon, look for northerly winds to continue down, northwest to north winds along the southwest coast in through the Alaska Peninsula. So that's just funneling down some colder air farther south. And looking at what we have in terms of any advisories, watches, or warning, there is a winter weather advisory in effect this Sunday evening through 10 a.m. Monday morning for the areas west of Fairbanks, including Tanana, Manly Hot Springs, Lake Minchumina, Nanana, and could see 2 to as much as 5 inches in a few spots, but generally at least a few inches of snow is anticipated. Fairbanks area may pick up an inch or 2 at most. So nothing terribly heavy, but it's about the most interesting weather we got going on, at least in through the interior. And as far as liquid equivalent precipitation forecast for Monday into Tuesday, you can see that area precipitation shifts a little further northward up toward Bettles and the North Slope. That's where the main action will be with snowfall across the interior and northern parts of the state on Monday. For Tuesday, we could see some snow along the western half of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, no big systems. There will be some rain spreading from south to north across the Panhandle, so Ketchikan Crag will be getting back into some rain, and that'll continue to spread northward after a rather pleasant weekend. The Panhandle did enjoy some sunshine and some areas of fog in the morning with that nighttime clearing. But otherwise, across the Panhandle on Monday, look for increasing cloud cover from south to north as we go through, especially the afternoon, with the rains arriving Monday night into Tuesday. And there's also the potential later in the week, still early, but those of you in the Panhandle, central, northern channels could see perhaps some snow make it down toward sea level there. Not definite, but certainly maybe the first little bit of snow to be sighted. And we'll talk more about just how the pattern is evolving, because it is looking rather wet across south central areas, northern Gulf Coast, as we head in through the end of the month and beginning of November. While looking at the satellite imagery, we have a curl in the clouds. There's a stronger low off the coast of Washington and Vancouver out there in the North Pacific, and that is flinging some moisture back on up toward the north and west. Otherwise, you can see the curl in the clouds working its way south of the Aleutians and emerging out into the Gulf. That's all part of that system that will be primarily staying out through the lower Gulf until we get toward Tuesday into Wednesday. It'll try to, at least that's going to help influence, push some of that moisture up along the panhandle, especially by Tuesday. And then the interior, we've seen some snow, generally light snow, areas of light snow or snow showers. And that will continue, though I think it'll begin to wane as we head through later Monday and Tuesday. So the main push coming through the central Alaska range and areas west of Fairbanks tonight into Monday morning before spreading north up toward the Brooks Range and North Slopes. We continue to see areas of light snow up that way right now as that low pressure is developed there in the lower Chukchi Sea, the north side of the Seward Peninsula. But the main weather feature is that low now bypassing, just passing south of the Aleutian chain, and that will continue to work its way east overnight into early Monday. Still a couple of lingering low pressure up there southeast of the Kenai. That's just the remnants of the storm, the more powerful storm that came through the eastern Aleutians Thursday and Friday with the hurricane force winds. As you'll notice tonight, early tomorrow morning and into Monday, the low just continues to sit up there in the lower Chukchi Sea and the northwest coast. That's just going to keep the snows going. So you have a combination of that system, circulation around that, and then the northerly winds on the backside of the Gulf low that's going to help just continue to pull down colder air along the west and southwest coast. And then finally, as we get into Tuesday, we are looking for another low to take shape in the central bearing west of St. Matthew. That'll be the next system, and you can see the low has got a little more broad in its perspective there in the Gulf as we get into Tuesday afternoon. That's why the rains will be spreading back toward the north and west as we go through the day on Tuesday, with areas of lingering light snow or flurries across much of the eastern half interior. So low temperatures for Monday morning, where skies are clear, could be down around freezing with some areas of fog in the inner channels of the panhandle. Otherwise, where there's some cloud cover or lower stratus form, temperatures will stay above freezing. Could be down to 14 there, upper Copper Basin, especially around areas like Glen Allen, and then otherwise still around or just above freezing from Anchorage southward. And then as we go in the Monday afternoon, look for highs again in the 40s to lower 50s in the panhandle. Generally 40s along the coastal areas of the northern and western Gulf, and upper 30s to near 40 as you get inland a bit. For Tuesday morning, low temperatures will generally be above freezing in the panhandle with the increase in cloud cover. And back to the west, it'll any type of clearing that occurs could allow temperatures to drop in the teens and 20s across the inner portion of the south central. And then for highs Tuesday, we're looking for readings again generally in the 40s to maybe near 50 up there toward Ketchikan and Craig, but otherwise 30s very common across the south central interior. In fact, even below freezing, 29 at McGrath, 27 at Glen Allen, but 36 at Anchorage. And you're still up around 40 at Homer, 42 at Kodiak, and then getting up toward the Arctic coast, lows in the teens along the Arctic and northwest coast, 20s most everywhere else along the Yukon River with areas of light snow. And then for Monday afternoon, temperatures are going to be hard-pressed to get above freezing anywhere across the northern half of the state. Many areas staying in the 20s along the Brooks Range and up toward the northwest and Arctic coast. And lows Tuesday morning, widespread lows getting down in the teens, lower 20s, so not terribly cold, but certainly in the downward slide that we would expect heading into winter season. And then we see high temperatures generally below freezing across the entire region from mid-20s to around 30 degrees at best. Across the southwest interior, we are looking for lows Monday morning to be below freezing in the 20s, but as we get out along the Alaska Peninsula, we're looking for low temperatures to generally stay above freezing, especially as you get from King Salmon southwestward out into the Aleutians. And then Monday afternoon, highs around freezing across much of the southwest coast, including Imanak on over toward Koryuk, and then down. As we get down again along the Alaska Peninsula, highs should make the lower 40s. And then Tuesday morning, lows in the 20s across much of the interior, and starting to get near freezing down into the central part of the Alaska Peninsula, with perhaps a few readings, Chiknik getting down close to freezing. And then for Tuesday afternoon, high temperatures below freezing as you go up the Yukon and Kuskokwim River basins. Still lower 40s along the tip of the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. And a quick check. Temperatures could average a bit above normal east-southeast interior as we go into early November, but the most important noteworthy thing is that we could see above normal precipitation centered around Cook Inlet and south central areas, which could mean cold rain, snow in the mountains, and maybe if conditions just turn just right, could get some snow get down into some of the lower elevations as well, which wouldn't be unheard of for early November.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's time now for your flying weather, and if you have a flight planned early this week, Monday into Tuesday. Over the weekend, we did have a storm force low pass just south of the Aleutian chain, and it's working its way now up into the southwest corner of the Gulf, North Pacific interface. This system is not nearly as strong as the one that produced the hurricane force winds Thursday and Friday there across the eastern Aleutians. Nevertheless, some of the moisture is creeping northward. We also have a low that's forming out over the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, northern portion of the Seward Peninsula, and the circulation with that is also helping to draw some moisture northward up along the Alaska Range into the central interior, where areas of snow, lower SIGs and visibilities are anticipated, and that'll expand northward up toward the north slope as well as we head into Tuesday. So looking IFR conditions rather widespread across the interior. And even Monday afternoon, especially eastern half, the Alaska Range, northern Copper River Basin, northward through the Brooks Range, north slope along the Arctic northern coast and northwest coast, and then also out over the open waters of the Gulf. And by Tuesday morning, we see extensive areas of IFR out over the Gulf and across portions of the central interior Alcan border, extending up along the northwest and Arctic coast. And then for Tuesday afternoon, we'll see that area diminish a bit, still lingering around the east central Alcan border, also out over the eastern half of the Gulf, on up into parts of the southern Panhandle, and then back out to the west St. Lawrence, on out into the central Bering as another system works its way across that region. So past conditions on Monday, and AKwx, we are looking for IFR conditions, and that will be the case at Adigan. And as we drop further south and west, IFR conditions are anticipated at Lake Clark and Merrill, improving to MVFR by afternoon. And as we round the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass, we'll see IFR conditions transitioning to MVFR. A little further east, Isabel expected to hold on to IFR conditions throughout the day on Monday. And Natasta should start out MVFR but become IFR. Tanita, generally MVFR throughout the day on Monday, and Portage should see marginal visual flight rules become VFR, kind of in a little pocket there. So that may allow them a little relief. And then Chilkoot and White in the northern Panhandle should generally enjoy another day of VFR conditions. Well, freezing levels Monday morning are at the surface all the way down into at least the northern third of the Alaska Peninsula and along the Gulf Coast into all but the southern and far western portions of the Panhandle. And aloft, the 2,000-foot freezing level pretty much encompasses most of the state except for the Panhandle, where freezing levels are around or a bit above 4,000 feet. And the best chance or threat of icing will exist with that low that's emerging into the southwest and south central Gulf between 6,000 and a flight level of 18,000 feet, and then the areas of snow that are going to be lowering visibilities and ceilings there between 3,000 and 12,000 feet across the interior, on up through the Brooks Range, and then back toward the northwest Chukchi Sea between 2,000 and 10,000 feet. The upper level jet stream winds at 30,000 feet. We have the primary core of winds now south of the Gulf there in the North Pacific. Otherwise, across the mainland in the west, winds aloft at 30,000 feet are out of the southwest at about 60 knots. Ahead of that low that's near the strait, dropping down to mid-levels, 9,000 feet. We have two circulations showing up that low that's come out of the Aleutians approaching the Gulf, and then the one up there in the lower Chukchi Sea on the north side of the of the Seward Peninsula, and then a belt of 40, 45 knot winds out of the northwest there out over the central Bering. And as we head further down through the levels, 3,000 feet, we see those two circulations, the one there approaching the southwest Gulf. The backside of it, winds out of the northwest, 35, 40 knots across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern half of the Aleutians, and then also coming in off of the eastern tip of Russia through the Bering Strait, winds out of the northwest there at about 45 knots. And taking a look at the areas that will have the greatest threat of any low-level turbulence between surface and 4,000 feet will be across the eastern half of the Aleutians on up into the Alaska Peninsula, and also an area there in the southwest just north of Bristol Bay. And it could be a bit bumpy, but again, compared to some of the severe turbulence that we saw here within the past several days with those systems, conditions are at least a little better. So if you are planning a flight here early in the week, please check the latest conditions and forecast, and I wish you a safe one.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Gina and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by EPSCoR to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Gina's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with, you know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox. It's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. The computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? it's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and now it's time to look at the sea ice edge. Well, it is the ice growing season, and ice is growing rather steadily across the Arctic and northwest coast, as well as ice in through parts of Kotzebue Sound and also emerging there on the south shore of the Seward Peninsula into Norton Sound, and we will expect this trend to only accelerate and continue as we dive deeper into the fall as well as get into winter time. Well, across the southeast, the marine forecast on Monday shows north winds, at least the northern half of the inner canals, 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. Southeasterly there, down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and then generally easterly winds, the midsection of the Panhandle at 15 knots, waves running about 9 to 10 feet or so across offshore areas there of the Panhandle, and southeasterly 10 knots there west of Yakutat. As we go into Tuesday, winds will be southeast to east throughout the Gulf, strongest winds around 30 knots with waves of 11 to 13 feet, generally from southward. The inner canals will see winds trying to turn more southeast to east across the lower half with waves as high as 10 feet there at Dixon Entrance. Off to the north, still northerly winds in Lynn Canal, waves 3 feet. For Monday across the northwestern Gulf, relatively quiet, 10 to 15 knot winds generally speaking, waves 3 to 5 feet through most of Cook Inlet, 2 feet or so in Prince William Sound, and 4 to 5 feet off the Kenai. On Tuesday, there will be some funneling of northwest winds out of Cook Inlet into just north and northeast of Kodiak with 35 knot northwest winds, waves 10 to 14 feet. Otherwise, winds will be lesser, only around 10 knots out of the north in Prince William Sound, the northern 2/3 of the Cook Inlet with waves 2 to 3 feet at best. For Monday, winds will be out of the north Kodiak Island onto the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula, waves generally running there 4 or 5 feet. However, still some 30 knot winds toward the off the mid coastal areas there in the North Pacific, south of Sand Point, 30 knots. Waves could be as high as 15 to say 19 feet. Then on Tuesday, overall winds out of the northwest across the region at 25 to 30 knots. Waves generally running 10 to 12 feet on the North Pacific Gulf side, and 7 to perhaps as high as 10 feet as you get from Port Huyden westward out to Cold Bay. Across the Aleutians, in the wake of the departing low, winds will be out of the north-northwest, 25 to 30 knots. Waves Still around 14 to near 20 feet on Monday on the North Pacific side, and generally 9 to 12 feet on the Bering side. Lesser wind once you get west of Adak. And then on Tuesday, overall, winds will be out of the west across much of the Aleutian chain at around 25 to 30 knots. Waves generally 8 to 10 feet on the North Pacific side, and thereabouts 8 to 10 feet on the Bering side. Across the western coast, winds will be out of the northwest and north, 25 to 30 knots. Waves 7 to as high as 9 feet east there of St. Paul and St. George. And then on Tuesday, winds will generally be out of the northwest, 15, still 25 knots off the southwest coast to east of St. George. Waves there 7 to 8 feet, but 4 to 5 feet as you get from areas west there of Norton Sound down to south of St. Lawrence Island. Along the Arctic coast for Monday, winds will be out of the east-northeast, 15 to 20 knots. Waves just a few feet, and then off the northwest coast, east winds 20 to 25 knots, turning northwesterly into Kotzebue Sound at 25 knots, and waves could be as high as 11 feet, the lower Chukchi. And then on Tuesday, winds will be somewhat variable, 10 to 15 knots there along the Arctic coast, waves just 2 or 3 feet, but turn westerly again into Kotzebue Sound and northwesterly there south of the Bering Strait, with waves of 5 to 7 feet. And a quick check of the weather maps. Tonight, there's that low bypassing, it's past east of the Aleutians, south of the Alaska Peninsula, emerging into the Gulf northern Pacific interface. Up there to the north, low pressure continues to sit and spin in the lower Chukchi Sea in the northwest coast. And that low will continue to work its way northeastward up to just off of the Panhandle by Tuesday, bringing a little gustier winds up there along coastal areas as we head into Tuesday afternoon. Otherwise, another low will be taking shape and moving its way across the central Bering as we head into Tuesday afternoon, and that'll be the next primary weather maker to affect the region, while the low up there along the northwest coast into the Chukchi Sea will continue to sit and spin and provide intervals of light snow or flurries along much of the west and northwest Arctic coast. So that's it for the show tonight. Thank you for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.